All right, I'm gonna hang out like 2 or 3 minutes maybe, and then we'll go ahead and get started coloring. I am checking in again, Michelle Houghton here, and we are doing some live Copic coloring. Hello, Laura. Glad you're checking in. I know we are at the very kind of tail end of the weekend of the Crafting Kimmy retreat weekend, and so I appreciate that a lot of people might be a little worn down, and so we might have a smaller group. But the beauty of doing these on Facebook is they stay recorded, so if you miss it and want to come back and watch, it will be here. And if you need to watch a section again, you can do that. So we'll give people a minute to kind of check in, and I will remind people as we go to ask questions. I will try to kind of keep watching my screen. I have a computer set up to the side so I can see questions, and I can also sometimes see when one at least flips up on the screen on my phone that's recording. So I'll kind of keep in tune with that, and that way if you guys have questions about Copics, we can make sure we get those covered. However, hearing me and delayed on my laptop doesn't work so well, so I'll get the volume turned off over there. All right. We are going to color a little sloth from that light is like extreme. There we go. The Sloth Some set. This is the guy hanging from the branch, and we are actually going to add the tree in. So that's not part of the stamp. It's just the little branch with the little sloth hanging on it. So we're going to add that in. I am doing some no-line coloring again. So the image that I stamped, let's see if I can get that one to show up. It's really light pink. Again, this is Memento ink, and it's a very light pink shade. So it's really kind of blown out. The only thing I've done so far is I used a Copic multi-liner. Hello, Roslyn. And I went over the little tiny slits of his eyes. The eye patches on a sloth tend to be darker in fur, and so I know that area is going to get darker, and I don't want to lose those little eyes. So I went ahead and put that in with some black multi-liner right from the get-go. You could add his nostrils as well. I tried doing that on one of my images when the set first came out, and I felt like he looked a little more pig-like, and so like a little piggy nose. And I know sloths have kind of that flattened nose look, but it was a little too much for me. Hello, Irene. I'm just going to greet people as they stop in. So at least to start, I won't catch them all if we have a little group. So anyway, little sloth. I stamped in pink. Now, if you're not confident with your Copic coloring, you're a brand new beginner, maybe you want to stamp him in black, and that way you don't have the double duty of trying to do this no-line coloring. Anyway, I am going to refocus my camera, get it facing downward. So we did this 2 days ago. As I switch this, if you're a person who gets dizzy really easily, you may want to close your eyes for a moment, and I will tell you when to open them back up. I'm going to flip you first. Flipped. And now I'm going to loosen. Hello, Jean. And find my sloth on the table. Tighten that back up. Sorry, my hand's in the way, so it's trying to refocus. Getting it out of the way so it can focus again. Okay. So this little guy is what we're looking at, this little sloth. Hi, Mary. Mary Pat. And then I am going to use a series of earth tones and some greens, or yellow greens in particular. That's really it for this one. I guess I have 2 grays as well. But the bulk of it, the little sloth, is going to be in the... Hi, Elizabeth. What does it say? Oh, I don't blame you. Kim has kept you guys busy this entire weekend. Elizabeth said she's a little tired. She looks like feels like the sloth looks. I think we're all there a little bit. This has been incredibly fun, but very busy, and so we're all a little tired. So even if you just want to watch, I am always cool with that. Hello, Amy. So I've got my Slothsome image. He's been stamped in a very light pink Memento ink, and then I added Copic multiliner, one of these guys, onto just the little eye slits. This was a 0.1 doing that. And then I'm going to use a series of E4s. So E4 1, E4 2, E4 3, E4 4, E4 7. And that is going to be the sloth. But if you don't have those E4s, you can use any series of E's you have. If you've got a little bit longer series, one that's at least like 4 markers long, you're going to have better success with that. So I'm going to use my lighter markers to start on the body, and I'm going to tuck this guy kind of up to the side so you can see kind of what we're aiming for on him. And today I'm going to actually work mostly light to dark, which is more if I'm trying to get things smooth is what I do. And this I'm not necessarily trying to get smooth, but I feel like it worked better on him. So I'm going to do his body and his little legs, and I'm going to fill those in with E41. Now, if I was trying to get him all the way smooth, I would get this base layer all the way smooth to start. I would try to get it nice and even. So I would go over each area a couple times, meaning sometimes I would work in a small circle like this, or just go pass over a couple areas a few times. Hello, Margaret. I think I missed somebody else, sorry. See if I can catch them on my other screen. But I'm getting all 4 legs and body. I've left the face for now. That's going to happen later, but I'm focusing on his body to start. So real light wash. It's not even, and you can even kind of check in on the back of your paper. Copic does bleed through, and I can see how blotchy it is on the back. There's light areas and dark areas. It's very uneven coloring. For this, because I'm adding texture onto it, totally cool, because it's really just a base layer to get rid of that white. So the next thing I'm going to do, hello Lori, is E42. And I'm going to use a flick stroke, and when I talk about flick strokes, it's that idea of setting the marker down and then, lifting it up so that it gets a little bit thinner. In this case, I'm going to do kind of a medium flick stroke. You can do them super thin, way up on the tip, and you can do super broad ones way on the side of your marker, but we're going to go for this in between. So it's tipped over a little bit, and I'm trying to think about the way his fur is hanging. Okay, so I'm kind of thinking from his rump, we're going to have one kind of big area that comes down, and it kind of comes down along his spine up to that. My guess is, I know their bellies are a little bit lighter, but because it's hanging against that branch, we're going to come from his tummy and do some short, broad flicks that his stomach's just going to be a little bit darker. Hey, Kim. Thank you for checking in. You have got to be about to hit the wall, exhausted. Then on his little legs, I'm going to come in, and I'm actually going to flick a little bit from the back. And again, kind of narrower, kind of showing that he's sloths, if you look at little photos of them, have this long fur. So we're trying to give him that appearance of long fur. Now you're going to notice as I hit that pink line with this second color, that ink, you can't really see that line anymore. It's disappeared. And that is the whole concept of no line color. Oh, you've already hit the wall. Kim says it's in the rear view mirror. The wall is. So thank you for stopping by then, Kim. And by the way, I love the bright, vivid pink hair. That had to add so much energy to you this weekend. It has to have sung to your soul. All right. Now the two pieces I've got left are the back legs, or 3 pieces, and his head. So the back legs, I want to do the same thing, but I'm coming from that back edge forward, but they're going to be darker. So I'm going to almost completely fill those in. That is going to help me push those back legs further back. They're further, and when I say back legs, it's the ones further away from the viewer. So not necessarily his 2 back legs back here, but the 2 that are further away from me. That is going to give some distance between me and those back legs. You are very welcome, Kim. All right, and then the top of his little head, again, they've got that long fur, so kind of back to those little bit longer flicks. And right from the top of his little head, we're doing kind of a fan. So we did that on his rump and on his head. So those are the general areas I'm going to add some shading in. Then I am going to come back with one darker. And hello, Diana. I'm kind of watching as we go. E4-3. And I'm basically going to hit some of the same areas. I'm going to get a little bit further up onto the tip of my marker. And notice I haven't shortened the stroke at all. I might have fewer strokes of this color, but I haven't shortened them. And one of the things I see with people that are starting with Copics, especially with if they like that look of the hair that's flicked, is each layer they get shorter and shorter. And so what you end up with is these bands of color, like the medium and then the narrow band of the dark and a narrower band. The dark in hair is the texture that kind of filters into and over the lighter ones. So you still have to do some long flicks. They're just fewer of them. So I'm kind of going right back over each of these areas, just like we did, and adding a few of these darker flicks. Come back to those legs that are further away from me. They get a little bit more of this color as well. There we go. Whoops. Went a little outside of my line, so I'm going to just get that foot a little wider. I could push that back in, but I'm not super concerned about that. And I'm going to do just a tiny bit of this dark color right along his belly that's along that tree limb. I'm also going to come in because I really want to feature his little face, and I feel like I'm losing that. Hello, Margaret. So I'm going to come right in along that edge and darken that up just a little bit. Okay. So a lot of people now look at their image and are like, all I see is zebra stripes. It's streaky. It doesn't look like fur. So what we're going to do, we want to leave some of that texture, but there's a couple places that we really want to soften. So I'm going to go back to my midtone, which is that E4-2, and especially right here along his belly, because this wasn't so much flicks as it was kind of darkening up or creating a shadow on his tummy or underside. So I'm going to smooth that out a little bit by going back to my midtone. And that's the only place I'm truly going to smooth it. Then I'm going to step all the way back to my E4-1, and I'm going to wash over that area, all of it. Now notice I'm not scrubbing. I'm going to come right over this middle area and do a little extra back and forth. But on the legs and on his head and on his rump, it's truly just kind of a wash. Now I left kind of that ridge along his back quite a bit lighter. I'm going to bring that up just a little bit. I feel like it's a little too much of a gap. So I'm going to use my mid-tone. The beauty of Copic is you can do this layering that you kind of go back and forth between your colors. There we go. I'm a little happier with that. I'm going to bring this mid-tone kind of along his back end a little further too. Like he's missing a little color there. There we go. So I always go back and forth a little bit. Each time I color an image, it looks a little different. Now his face, if you look at images, again, I always refer to real pictures of sloths just to see kind of what they really look like. The fur on their face is really a different color. So I switched all the way over to some warm grays, and I have a W1 and a W3. And I am going to color the area kind of around the nose and the eye rings. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, if I hit those or go into those are going to be darker. So it's not going to be a big deal. That's part of why I'm doing them last, at least on the sloth himself. So I've got that W1, and then I'm going to come in with W3, and all I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to come right to the side and flick in. I'm going to come over to the other side, little tiny flicks in. Please remember you can flip him upside down. And then I'm also going to come kind of right along this bottom edge and under his nose and do just a little bit of this W3 underneath. And all that's doing, hi Nancy, is pushing those edges back and under so he looks a little bit more round. He doesn't look quite so flat. And you're going to notice one of the things I love about working with grays, any of the gray families, whether you've got the neutral grays, the cool grays, the warm grays, the toner grays, any of them, is that they almost blend without blending, in that the colors kind of melt together really easily. So I barely have to touch the edge of that W3 and it just melts into that W1, which is so refreshing. Sometimes some of the colors are not as happy together as others. So the grays are a great place to start if you're new to Copics. I know they're not near as exciting. One of the reasons we like Copic is all that color, but they get frustrating sometimes because some of the colors don't blend the way we think they should. So E44 is going to be next, and this is where I really wanted those little eye patches to get dark, and that is truly what a sloth looks like. So I'm going to use E44, and I'm going to do this on his eye patches. And I appreciate there's more detail than what I am showing. I'm simplifying this just a little bit, and I'm going to apologize right now. My eyes are not working well today, and the eye doctor couldn't figure it out yesterday, so I'm kind of stuck with some cranky vision. So I am not like staying really well within my lines. And I know some of you are laughing and say, I never stay within my lines anyway, for yourself. So I'm just joining the club. We're just not going to stay in the lines, and we're going to laugh about it and enjoy just coloring. Hello, Rana, sorry if I pronounced that wrong. And then we've got his little nose. I think I'm gonna actually wait and do his nose with the darkest color I've got on my table. So this was E44. E47 is as dark as I am going today. And all I'm going to do on the eye patches, it's going to come right along that bottom edge and just barely flick up. right along the bottom edge and barely flick up. And then his little nose is kind of this fun little bump. So even if it's not perfect, we've got this little kind of upside down U shape. And then the other thing I'm going to do with this color is he's got these claws. Now on a sloth, I will tell you, because again, I've been studying photos, the claws are actually typically lighter, kind of a gray, but because I've gone with a no line image this time, and I want you to see the claws, I don't want to lose them, I went darker. So I've cheated a bit. Hi, Terry. So there you go. And then the only thing is I do feel like, at least on mine where I can see, and I'm sorry I can't enlarge this very well for you guys, but I can see a spot between my E47 and E44 on the eye patches. So I'm going to come back in with my E44 and just pull that. So I start on the E47 and pull into the E44. Again, this is another color family. If you don't own the E4s, I actually find a ton of uses for them because they have a little more gray in them than some of the other earth tones. So using them for a lot of hair colors, human people hair colors, it's a really great set. At least I find a lot of uses for them. So here's my little guy. Now, we're going to do some background. And you could stop here. You could do the little branch and stop. But I always figure, and Kim says one of the things you guys have enjoyed is learning how to do some of the backgrounds. And I totally appreciate that. I think that's kind of a trend right now of doing more of your own coloring and filling in those backgrounds. So we're going to do a little bit of that on this guy. And you can do this in two ways. This is a simple one. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to add kind of this vertical tree coming over here. So vertical tree. And then I'm just putting a general kind of shape of tree behind him. Two things you can do. I'm going to do it. You could do it without any references. You can just do it with your markers. And because we're using lighter markers to start, it's very, unintimidating, or it should be very unintimidating because you can correct it because we're starting with those lighter colors. If you are extremely unconfident about doing that, you could do a very light pencil line, and I am talking very light. So if you wanted, you could come in with a pencil and give yourself kind of this really barely there pencil line for the tree trunk, kind of vertical, slightly tipped away from the rump of the sloth. And then you could kind of add a squiggly line of the leaf, kind of the foliage behind him. It could maybe come even below him. And I'm thinking I might do that on this one, that it comes below him. And you may or may not even be able to see that on mine. Here's the trick with pencil. If I have this dark, and I've gone really dark with that pencil line, and I leave it, and I color my Copics over it, it's stuck. It is permanently on my paper. It will not move. It will not erase. So when you put pencil lines, and Margaret, I would tell anyone, if you're more confident with a pencil, there's several backgrounds that I start with a pencil, absolutely. So this is totally up to you. In fact, I will leave my pencil lines today so you guys can kind of see this. What I'm going to encourage you about, though, is if you leave them dark, they will be stuck there. And if you're if you've gone through all the effort to make a no-line image, you probably want your background to also be kind of a pure no line. So you want those pencil lines super light, and light to the point that whatever color you're going to use is going to kind of make them disappear, that it's dark enough to make those edges disappear. I know for me, the pencil lines that I've got on there, they're super light. They're just enough for me to see, but they're light enough that when I come back and color it, you won't be able to see it through the Copic, okay? So that's what I've got. And then I think I put some of my pens away that I need, my markers away. Luckily, my markers are sitting to my elbow here, so I'm going to grab those. Two of my very favorite wood colors are actually in the E3s. Mary Pat, she says, is too heavy with pencil lines. So if you can go without, Mary Pat, and again, this is going to be a simple one. So what I'm going to do, and this is for if you have a pencil line or not, the E3 one is going to be my base color. So whatever color you're basing your wood in, let's do the branch first. So we're going to come in and get this little branch that's under our sloth, and I have to turn him so I can see and not go up onto my sloth. And I really do want to switch earth tones because I want it to show differently than that sloth. And then whether you've got a pencil line or not, you're going to come in and create kind of a vertical, and it does not need to be straight. In fact, I would encourage you not to use a ruler, ladies or gentlemen, whoever is watching. Leave it kind of wiggly. It's bark. It's a tree. All right. So that's E3-1. And then I'm going to go up and down vertical. It does not need to be smooth. In fact, I'd rather it not be completely smooth. And so we have kind of a tree trunk. It's not a full tree. When I trim this down, I'll probably trim it up onto that tree trunk. So we're there. All right, and then we want to add a little bit of texture to it. So I jump up to an E3-5. So the first one was an E3-1. This is an E3-5. I'm going to use my brush nib. You could use the corner of a broad nib. And I am going to go back and forth and out onto my tree and create a little bit of a bark texture. It can be a little bit darker right up under the sloth, so I can add a little bit more on there if I want. And then when that tree, and I'm going to add little tiny starts to a couple of these little branches. When I come over to my tree though, I need to go in the direction of the tree. So make sure you switch in that tree bark. And obviously it depends on the type of tree this is. But you can kind of see how quickly I'm going. This is very purposeful. If you go super slow, it's not going to look like bark. Promise you that. So notice my lines get thin and thick. They kind of wiggle. They run into each other. They start and stop. There we go. Now, for me, that texture is a little crisp. I'd rather it blend in a little bit more. So just like on the sloth, I'm going to go back to my lighter color, and I'm not going to scrub it. I'm going to go over it once, all the way over with my E3-1. And you can see it soften. The tree itself gets one shade darker, and that darker E3-5 kind of softens. I'm going to let it sit for just a second and decide, is that soft enough, or do I need to wash over it one more time? And it's really up to you. This is going to be that moment of artistic license, if you've heard of that. You get to make the choice of what you like the look of. So kind of sit back, see what you got. If you need to go over it one more time, you can. Mine's gonna end up darker than my original one, and that's okay, but I kind of like the look of that today. It's not totally smooth. If I wanted to add a third layer of texture, you can actually go back with either a really light earth tone like that E41, or you could even, in this case, go back with a colorless blender and work some little stripes. Not solid ones that go all the way up and down the trunk, but a few in between, a few of those little dark bark pieces. And you're going to add in kind of a whole nother layer of texture. And this wasn't in my original, so it'll make it look even more different. But that gives me a really nice tree that now we've attached his branch to. Hello, Alice. So then I've got 2 sets of yellow greens. And the reason for that is we've got these fun little leaves that were part of the stamped image. And then I want to look like he's up in a tree. So the foliage is around him and behind him. So I've got a really bright set of yellow greens. This one is a YG13 and a YG17. That's going to be the leaves. And that, because it's brighter, has more yellow, it's going to pop toward the viewer. And then I picked out a second set, and these are YG4s, YG41 and 45. Those are going to be what my background leaves are out of. I'm going to be the first one to tell you, out of any one Copic, I will be one of the people to tell you, you do not need all of the colors. So if you don't have these particular ones, make do with what you have, either layer a gray underneath and I am happy to share more about that if you guys have questions about doing that. So if you don't have all these colors, tell me what you've got, and I'm happy to kind of throw out some ones that you can add together to get closer to what I'm doing, or a different combination that might work equally as well. It's going to look different, but you're going to get that same effect. But we're going to go for a brighter, more saturated yellow-green for the little leaves that are next to his head. Hello, Renee. We keep have people checking in. That's very nice. Hello, hello. So I'm going to fill these little guys in with the lighter of the 2. This is YG13. I don't know how everyone's weather is, but I have to say, at least in Des Moines, Iowa, today is one of the more gorgeous days we have had in a while. YG17, which is always good for the soul. And then I'm going to come right down the center of those leaves. So I'm going to extend those little stems out and come right down. And on the bigger ones, I'm going to add a little bit more because I've got more space to play with this YG17. There we go. I don't really need to blend this, but I'm going to come back on the bigger ones and pull that out. Now, people will ask me about getting these little teeny tiny lines. Oh, in Bremerton, Washington. I am sorry to hear that, Renee. Yeah, I know there's a lot of fires going on in the Northwest right now, so definitely thinking about all of you up there. I have family in the Northwest, at least in Washington, and friends in Oregon, so you guys stay safe. So I've got those really bright, saturated yellow greens up front. Now we're going to cool it down. We're going to add some yellow greens that have more gray in them, so they're desaturated. And we're going to put those behind the sloth. But I really wanted to wash them down, so I'm actually going to start with my colorless blender. Okay, so I did put that pencil line in that kind of comes down behind him, and it's just this kind of wiggly, wonky line. And all I'm doing with this is trying to wet down that area. So you might, on yours, you might even see where you've got now that kind of wet, and I can barely see mine. I think it's somehow this light that I've got going is a little hard to see right now. Kind of diffused light. The sun is from the other angle. So I'm going to wet that whole area, and I might need to come back and wet this bottom part again. But I've got it nice and wet with the colorless blender. And it doesn't need to go right up to the edges. But I'm going to use the lighter of the two. I've got a YG41. And I'm going to come in really, really loosely. As I get close to the sloth, I need to slow down. But it's kind of a scribble. When I teach class, I teach people how to squiggle and scribble. And because I'm pressing to the side of my marker, I would call this more of a scribble because it's just back and forth. It's filling the space. I still have some white areas, and that's intentional. And I'm going to come in with YG45. And I'm going to come into some of those white areas. Again, as I come along the back of the sloth, slow down. But I want it to come right up against him. I can't avoid that. In fact, if I do avoid actually touching him, it looks like he has a halo. So I do have to come right up against him. So I need to remind myself just to slow down. So it shows that it's behind him. I want to get some of that darker color down below as well. It's very quiet. This is when I'm teaching a live class and it gets quiet like this. I start humming or singing, and I'm like, oh, you guys, we need music so you guys don't have to listen to me singing. It's been fun in some of the classes when there's multiple teachers in the room or people helping in the background. It's so fun to hear the chatter because that feels more like a class to me. I almost decided to look for some TV show where there was some sort of audience or crowd, so it would feel like we had more of a class atmosphere going today. So then I'm going back to my YG41, and unlike the other times, this time I'm going to do a little scrubbing. So I'm just coming back over. I'm going over that whole area real good. And it really just kind of smushes those colors together. There's another very technical Copic term for you, smushing. We're going to smush the colors together. And then I'm going to do one more layer of texture on this area as well. So I like the way that looks, and because he's now a little bit crisper and those little leaves are crisper, they pop forward, which is what I want. And those are cooler, so they're pushed back. Again, that is what I want. But I'm going to add a little bit more to that. I'm going to come in with my colorless blender, and I am going to do big dots of colorless blender. You could have some smaller, some bigger, but I'm going to kind of work my way around. It doesn't need to be totally full. In fact, you can do little clusters of them if you want. You can always add more. And what you're going to see, they'll show up kind of crisp to start, but then as that ink spreads out, that alcohol solution spreads out, because it's not ink, it's alcohol. As that alcohol solution kind of disperses, it softens, and it's pushing the ink around that I laid down on the paper. So I'm getting a whole nother texture.
it's kind of diffusing or softening the texture that I have on there. But again, it kind of creates that mottled effect that you'd see in a bunch of leaves kind of clustered behind our image. Yay. Pretty happy with that. And you can keep fiddling. You could add more yellow green in. You could add some cooler colors in to push that further back. But I like how he looks up in that tree. So the last thing I'm going to do is I am going to come in and add some sky. So I am using kind of my traditional sky color. I typically use either a BG000 or a B000. Those to me give kind of a nice sky blue. And I'm keeping this small. So if you look at the original, or at least what mine is working from, I would trim this down. Sometimes I'll try to get things really square so I can leave kind of that white edge and have it be pretty even. This isn't necessarily going to be that way. So I'm just trying to get it out so I can have kind of a nice rectangular shape to cut out and put on a card. So I don't need to go very far. And a lot of times I will use the broad nib or that chisel nib when I do a sky. And I do work in circles. You do not have to. The goal is to hit those areas at least 2 or 3 times. Slowing down as I get close to my little sloth. If your backgrounds look streaky, or you feel like you can see all of your little marks, more ink. More ink. You need to add more. And that is left over from being an art teacher in high school, but it's become my kind of mantra a lot for beginners in particular. A lot of times they just need to add more ink. They will be happier with their blends. They will be happier with their backgrounds. And with alcohol ink, like Copic, you tend to be able to add quite a bit. Now, can you add too much? Yes. Yes, you can. There is a threshold. But most people, if they're struggling getting a smooth background or getting their blends, it's because they need more. And Joyce tuned in here toward the end. Joyce, remember you can watch all the way from the beginning when you want. That's why we love Facebook, is we can watch them again or start them over. Looks like I pushed in a little bit on my sloth. So I'm going to give that sky a second to dry. And I am going to come back with my E41. This is where my eyes are not doing me a favor. They're making it a little harder. I lose my edges pretty easily these days. All right, but that worked. All right, so we have a little Copic. I know this was actually shorter today, and I knew it would be, but I also knew when I teach a long weekend, those last sessions need to be short and sweet and just feel good. Thank you, Margaret. I sure appreciate that. So I've got my two little sloths, one from a couple nights ago that I was practicing on and one from today. I'll kind of stick here for a couple minutes. If you have any questions, you are certainly more than welcome to ask about Copic at all. And thanks, Mary Pat. I am going to be teaching a couple Copic colleges this year, just a little plug for what I'm doing. And 2 live ones. I've got one in Washington, Illinois coming up, and then I have one out in the Sacramento area that's going to be in November. And it looks like, at least so far, that we're still going to be able to do those classes. There is a chance that I am going to put this year's Copic College online. It is a ton of teaching and it includes a manual. So it is a little bit of it will be a pricier online class, but it's me video wise, it's probably going to be a minimum of 20 hours of video, if not more, that you would obviously not sit and watch in 20 hours. You'd watch in sessions. It'll be broken into very small chunks, but a lot of video. And it really will be just how I teach Copic College for the weekend. So if you're interested in that, tune into my blog over at scrapweaver.com. Let's see. Tanya has a question. I've seen so many different Copics. What are the best ones to start with for beginners? Oh my gosh. Okay. So Tanya, I think the best thing you can do is ask yourself what you're going to be coloring, and then look for little sets that are going to work really well for that. Do this if you are interested truly in some like starter lists of Copics. If you PM me, kind of send me a personal message, I will watch for it and I will give you or you can go on my blog and send me an email, send me a message through that. Either one, I will send you an email with a couple different starter lists attached. That might be even easier. If you don't mind doing that, let's do that, because it becomes a very individual thing. But I would love to send you a couple lists. I've got kind of links to 2 or 3 of them. So PM me, I will get you those links, whether through Facebook or through my blog, so you can do through my email. I'd be happy to. All right, ladies. If you tag me with any Copic questions, you can do it in this file, underneath the video in comments, or on Craft and Kimmy. If you tag me ever with Copic questions, I will answer. I promise. I try to stay pretty current and stay in touch with Copic, the people who make the markers. So I try to stay kind of on top of information. So if you've got questions, please ask. Obviously, I've done this for a long time. I'm supposed to make it look easy and fun, but I've been doing it for a long time. So it ends up looking more easy and fun. So hang in there, ask questions, and especially from someone who's done it a while, see if they can look at what you're doing. So post stuff if you've got questions too. All right, ladies, have a wonderful Sunday evening. Kim, thank you so much for our amazing crafty retreat. And hopefully next time we'll get to do it live, and maybe I can make a guest appearance. That would be amazing. All right, ladies, have a great night. Wonderful weekend to all of you. And I will see you again on Craft and Kimmy. Bye, everybody.